All right, so welcome. This is Change the Meta. It's a podcast focused on high analytical conversation about esports and gaming. The purpose of this is really to voice our opinions to assist in the longevity and growth of the gaming industry. My name is Ricky slash Prayer.
My name is Luke, Dr. Karma.
Yeah, I always wondered how I was gonna do this, but my name is Cactus, and I think that was too unique to choose a different name. But so thanks for joining us for our first episode. Today we're going to be talking about Valorant. It's Riot's new FPS game. If you haven't heard about it, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be hearing this podcast. Why players are leaving this Counter-Strike Overwatch scene in favor of Valorant. Stuff such as like the grassroots approach employed by Riot in regards to their esports leagues. We'll talk a little bit more about that during the podcast, as well as what Valve and Blizzard are doing to remain competitive as Valorant catches fire.
Yeah, so first of all, what is Valorant? Valorant is a 5v5 character-based tactical shooter where players utilize strategy, reflexes, and skills to dominate the map. In its first month of beta, we have seen Valorant clash with the current kings of the FPS genre, mostly Overwatch and Counter-Strike Global Offensive. For years, both Overwatch and CSGO have enjoyed enormous success, sold at arenas, and acknowledgement of games that have tremendously impacted the esports scene. However, the tides are turning. During beta, we have already seen iconic players such as Sinatra, Tens, and Hiko take advantage of this new landscape to conquer what is now the Valorant Pro scene.
Okay, so I've heard some discussions about this already about like, it's like, Valorant looking pretty hype. It's gonna bring some people over, and while like I think this came out like a week or two ago, right? Like that these people got announced. I'm interested in seeing like just how many more like tier 1 people go over, or is this more of a like let's scrape all the bottom 3-tier teams that aren't gonna win like a major championship and have a better luck in a new esport kind of thing. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's one thing to actually cultivate top talent, either organically or from the existing scenes, but if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, that's not very encouraging for your talent pool. You don't want to just take the dregs of another game and make it your own. You want to have good power players that are gonna bring in fans, from existing games and new games. The new game itself, Valorant needs to have a new scene, but take advantage of the fact that it's also an FPS like CSGO and Overwatch. I think that's a very interesting point.
Yeah. And do you know what I'm thinking too? I'm excited for the first native one that you're mentioning, like the first wow, this like you heard of this like kid, he's like super nuts, like just started playing, or like like somehow brought him from a game. But I agree, it's like usually the unknown star that like the pub stomper, like the new young talent coming in. Yeah, like that's what is probably gonna be more exciting and more indicative of like a successful esports scene. But yeah.
Totally agree.
Are you saying like more like people who start originally with Valorant?
Yeah. As in like because we're talking about like these players like leaving this scene, and then as I was mentioned, like, but there's a lot more that aren't notable that we're like that we're not mentioning, right? So I don't feel like that really brings us that much excitement into the Valorant like esports scene overall. You're like, oh, like sick! Can't wait to see if this guy like redeems himself in like a new career. But that's why I was mentioning what would be more exciting to me, which is just like some new like young star like starting at Valorant.
That's pretty fair. I think Tens is actually a good argument for like, even though he came from CS:GO, he's very skilled in Valorant so far, and he's just like very young. I think he literally just turned 19. So I think like just this is kind of like that young talent that you're talking about, and the fact that he made the switch from CS:GO. I mean, he's still super young, and to make it just like commit to Valorant is I can kind of you can kind of make the argument that he might be natural born, but I think what you're more talking about is just like only like a purist, a Valorant purist is what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's exactly what I mean. Mm-hmm.
It's their first like competitive game, maybe. I mean, obviously you don't like it, having to be their first game is ridiculous.
Right, like that. Imagine.
That's but I totally get the sentiment. My first MOBA was League, so like having to be a simple like either like their first like serious FPS or their first serious like competitive point capture game. I think that that'll be really cool. But do you think then these players are leaving because of their opportunities that they're getting, like from like top to bottom, they're just getting more opportunities, like regardless of skill, or do you think they're playing because the game is more fun, or like why are they then jumping ship of either CS:GO or Overwatch? Would you say?
I would say personally, from like what I've seen, it just seems like a good investment for them. I think their current organizations, especially when you look at like Overwatch, there's like a big talent exodus with like Monty leaving the scene. Now you have Sinatra leaving the scene, and I think that kind of like it demonstrates how the people internally feel about the industry, about like competitive Overwatch, for example. So I think like by making this investment early, you kind of get it established. Like I was one of the pioneers of Valorant. You get a lot more experience and kind of like I think a lot of the structure and the grassroots approach is really appealing to some of these players. Where I think the threshold for Valorant might be a lot higher compared to like the peak of OWL or the peak of CS:GO.
That's interesting you say that because that it's peak the peak of the two prior mentions of CS:GO and Overwatch League, but it could surpass those. But it's not getting the direct support from Riot initially. Riot as themselves have said we're going to take the hands off approach, and Overwatch League had a huge meteoric rise, maybe a downfall. It's on the way on the other side of the parabola right now, but they had a huge support from Blizzard in terms of building the arena and just getting that scene started. So we'll see how which approach ends up being better. If it was the money being pumped into the Overwatch League too fast and wasn't stable, or if it was actually just
hands off.
another reason,
Yeah.
or like why did that Overwatch League like maybe like not necessarily fail? It's still around, and there's still a lot of viewership. Its viewership has gone up significantly during the quarantine, as most games have, but it just their players are leaving. That's a fact. So why and will that be sustained for Valorant? Can they keep it slow and steady, or do they need some of that AAA money?
Yeah, I mean, like, dude. Okay, so we were mentioning like Sinatra. He's an MVP
He's the
of your
face, yeah.
league. Yeah, and like,
Faker.
Face of the Overwatch
okay.
League for sure.
I mean, what does that say? What does that say about that, like the Overwatch scene or that esport for the state? Like, we're talking about the stage of which Value Esports is at, right? Where they're like, oh, we will offer a little bit prize pool to, like, I think Luke's gonna cover a little bit more later, but like they're not even like laid out, right? There's not like a road to the being the best, like a worlds format or anything like that. And your MVP is like, this game in its beta form is so intriguing to me that I would love to swap over. Like it's like the Faker moving over.
I mean, yeah, I mean, to put it in a traditional sports comparison, I know the Last Dance is going on right now. I mean,
Oh
Michael
yeah.
Jordan, when he left the Bulls to go play baseball, it's like, what the hell? Yeah, he's a pro athlete, like he can go do that, but
Oh
dude,
man,
you just
imagine
won
he does
three
that and goes
championships in
back.
a row. Like you literally just like he's the MVP of the league. It's not obviously Sinatra's not in the name of everyone's mouths across the globe, but in terms of
Right.
esports, like he's the MVP of the face of your league, like for Overwatch, and that's crazy to lose your star player.
You just got me
It's fun for
thinking.
yeah, you just got caught sleeping at the wheel if you did that. Like that's incredible.
Like imagine
So
though he does that though he like does the Michael Jordan
pull
move,
the
so he's like,
Jordan,
you know
yeah.
what, I'm gonna go to Valor, man, and it turns out he's like heart stuck grandmaster or something, and he's like,
Or the scene's
I'm
just not
going
big
back.
enough. Or the scene's not big
Yeah,
enough. It doesn't get big fast enough. Like if the
yeah,
grassroots
agreed.
doesn't work, we'll see. But
Right,
right
because it's
now,
not, there's
he's
no guarantee
taking that risk.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but he's willing to take the bet at the stage it's at is very interesting, right?
Mhm.
Like, I don't think, like, why do you have to announce it so early or commit so hard, kind of thing.
I mean, you have
But
players like Zelsis also who are maybe not top tier, but still really good. And they're advertising on their Twitters and asking for orgs, and they've qualified for tournaments, and that's great. They're taking the initiative, but man, that tweet may fall on deaf ears. They may not get an org.
mhm.
So, but they got to try somehow, or they'll be jobless. You can't just sit there and do nothing.
Yeah.
So good for them. I mean, it takes guts to take a risk, but maybe if they're having fun playing the game, it's a lot easier just to do that too. So
Yeah, but so could you go a little bit more into like how like I'm not even that clear on it myself. Like to be honest, like what is Riot doing and like what aren't they doing?
So they've definitely made contracts with top tier streamers and personalities to promote their game. They've handed out beta keys and have been promoting it through Twitch and that media platform a lot. But in terms of actual support for tournaments and franchising, like they have with their League of Legends game,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be doing that anytime soon. They have no roadmap for that or timeline essentially on um, that sort of investment. They want to keep it organic, so third party companies will come in and host your dream hacks or your
Yeah,
IEMs or something along the lines. And once a certain quality of tournaments happen, maybe Riot will step in and franchise. But as of now, they're just going to keep it grassroots, air quotes, which is
which is like pretty understandable,
oh,
you
absolutely.
know, like as a
It's no
stage
risk.
citizen, right?
It's no
Yeah,
risk for Riot either. That Riot takes no responsibility if the scene fails. They're like, well, the game just wasn't
literally just
meant to be.
like an open beta. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. And then they don't have the same problem that Overwatch had, where Overwatch was sure, so they invested all that money, and now literally the arena is closed. It's not a figure of speech. The battle arena in LA that they spent millions of dollars to build is closed. Less than 3 years. That they don't want that to happen.
What I will say about the grassroots approach is that I think it's probably easier for them overall because it's kind of like saying it's not our responsibility to build up the scene and to kind of like mirror what they've done in the past. Like I think LCS when it first started was very grassroots. They kind of allowed the player community to build up and create these tournaments instead of directly saying like this is what the competitive scene looks like, and it was I think it was really successful. I think that grassroots approach allowed tournaments like IEM, MLG to really figure out what do people really enjoy in seeing competitive League of Legends. And then now they're doing the same with Valorant. So I think just this past weekend, Elite Esports hosted a Valorant tournament, had a lot of the major orgs, Dignitas, Cloud9, and that's just the first of many grassroots tournaments that are going to be held. And I think it just really helps because people get more invested in these like storylines that build up from even like the beta. Um, so I think it's going to be pretty exciting to see the development of more grassroots tournament. Maybe it'll hit an IEM, an MLG, and then at the end of the year or something, Riot can look at the data and say, okay, this is worth investing.
I totally agree, and you mentioning that the growth, with tournaments, that is, I think, one of the ways that the game is going to be able to grow grassroots, that tournaments are going to be able to happen. And there have been a significant number of tournaments already. I think there have been, I mean, there's been 70 plus tournaments, but they're all been B and C tier tournaments. And just to categorize those real quickly, a B tier tournament is usually held online between at least top tier teams of two top tier teams, hopefully. So your teams that are sponsored by organizations or have major backings of themselves. And C tier is low ranked events, only online usually, and no top teams, like very casual tournaments. So you're ranging from $0 prize pools to even one tournament had $25,000 prize pools, that's crazy. For the game's been out for a month and 10 days now, a month and 11 days, something like that. So and I think that's a big statement for $25,000 tournaments have already happened, and equivalent of $100,000 in prize money already coming out. That's just
I think
that's a lot.
that's a reflection of just like the change in like esports, the improvement
That's
where
very true as well.
yeah, more people like with so much with like some of the early success in esports, I think a little bit of the sponsors are more willing to loosen up the purse strings and sponsor early events like this because, and I think it's also more to do with like the streaming community because now it's like the numbers are there, right? They're like they know just how many people are like spend their time watching this, and I think but I agree with you what you're saying. That it's just a good indicator, right? You're like it's good to see and it gets people hyped up, and I hope it does more.
Yeah, and I was especially surprised by, because this is something that I wasn't exposed to, maybe it's because of the format. didn't exist back when I was first getting into League. Because I would have loved to do this as a kid in high school or maybe even college with friends back home. Is some websites like Checkmate Gaming, Tournament, and GameSync. They're hosting these really small $50 prize pool, no cost entry tournaments where you and your friends can enter and play against other pubbies, and it's really exciting. I mean, it falls under certain gambling laws, so you can't win the money if you live in certain states where internet gambling is legal, unfortunately. But it's just really exciting that you don't have to queue up against have 10 players in the same public match. You can have 5 randoms of various skills and play against each other in an organized tournament online at no cost to you, which is just that's really cool to me. And hopefully more of those grow and are noticed by different players, because I think it's a great natural growth method and it's no cost. So hell yeah. Do you guys see any big big teams building full rosters yet? Because we mentioned signings, but I mean, you got to have a roster to compete in a tournament. Yeah, you can, like I mentioned with pubbies, you can have 5 friends or whatever, but for these bigger tournaments, you actually have to organize full competitive rosters, and the game's a 5-player game. So, like, what I mean, is there anything out in the works that you're hearing?
Well, I think Cloud9 currently has a couple players, so I know Tens is for sure signed with Cloud9. They have another former player that played for them in CSGO that transferred. I think he was on the same team as Tens. But I don't think there's any team with an official 5-man roster. I think maybe Dignitas FE might, the all-female team. Which I think is super cool. I think that's something that we should mention, because I think that's very interesting to take this different approach. But I think like in terms of other teams, I think they're kind of like holding off to see maybe exactly what we talked about before. Maybe these like Valorant purists or people who are like kind of like known for Valorant only, kind of like giving these new studs a chance.
It's true. Yeah, they don't want to invest too early, especially when there's no tournaments to compete in. I mean, they'd basically just be streaming for them right now, which isn't all that unprofitable, but it's harder to sell jerseys and compete in tournaments when there's not an established scene, really. But I'm wondering. I'm just hoping that these players who are signing are getting compensated well, because it's with esports it can be pretty shady sometimes. Are you getting signed on and you're like getting a keyboard or something to play for them, or back? So that's obviously like way back ancient times of esports, but now people have to be compensated. They're playing.
Right, but so we're not, so we're talking about how early this is, right?
Yeah,
yeah, I agree. It's a meme.
It is a meme, but
yeah.
Sinatra's leaving Overwatch League, so he's got to get being paid somehow. Like he wouldn't do that otherwise. Like just because Valorant's the new cool thing, there's got to be dollar signs behind that.
Yeah, but I wonder. I honestly just so curious. Like, how much are you paying like someone that's not that good at that esport, or not the best in the esport that they're playing? No, obviously excluding Sinatra and stuff, right? Because that's like one of the rare exceptions. For an esport that league isn't even developed, are we? So it's obviously more than the keyboard, but less than what? We're talking like 5 digits at least, or like what do you think?
Yeah. Because it's definitely not going to compare to something like Impact salary in League when that was huge.
Yeah.
Like that was like, oh my god, it's rumored to be 7 figures. Like holy crap.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be on the low end,
Yeah,
not all
I can't
contracts are huge.
I can't imagine some of these esports teams forking over huge amounts of cash for something that doesn't have legs yet. And that's the key word, is yet. Those legs could be chicken legs, or they could be goddamn ox legs and like run off into the sunset. So we'll see what happens. But I just don't see them. I think esports orgs don't fork over money very loosely. Because they know what it's like to be poor.
Yeah, I mean, Hooney's contract would disagree with you.
But that's just one. That's
they learned their lesson.
Can't
Can't say they didn't learn.
for those not aware, Dignitas was in possession of an extremely large contract of one player, and it was like 90% of their roster was in that. Their money was in him, and it failed miserably. He's previously a champion of multiple regions, and it just
Dude, it's honestly
he's
like
kind of
how
washed
do
up. Not that I love
yeah,
him, but I'm sorry, man. He's
it
a
would
washed up
be
Korean
like
player.
it would be like signing like let's say because I don't want to call him like a really good player, but I would say like it's like signing Shaq, but like in the later years. It's like it's like not in the prime form. So it's very questionable, like that contract for it to be rumored
It
like
was a branding
7.
thing. It was a
Yeah,
branding thing. They wanted to associate Hooney's brand with him. I mean, he's got a huge following,
Does I agree with that.
you can't dismiss that.
but I think they also wanted him to perform at level way better than he did. But that
Mhm.
they're not going to get Hooney money. They're not going to get impact money. But maybe they do get challenger level, and that's the minor leagues equivalent for a league.
Yeah, that's like 25K or something.
25K, yeah. That the average
Yeah.
salary in the CS challenger scene, rather not Counter Strike, but the challenger League of Legends competitive scene is around 25K. So that is, it's not livable. You can't own a house
Yeah.
on that, but you are for anywhere from 19 to 25-year-old kid on average, pretty good for a game that doesn't
Yeah,
exist yet,
honestly,
I'd
not
say.
bad.
So we'll see. I agree with you. It's probably not a keyboard, but I like you said, I wonder what the contracts are holding, because if the teams are actually gonna throw that money around, Counter Strike and Overwatch are gonna have to do something to compete back. They're gonna have to either like fully establish teams and their system of traveling, away and home meets is actually gonna work, or Counter Strike is actually gonna have to establish an official scene as well. Franchising for both of them. Or I don't know. I just think Valorant has set up a formula to succeed. Now it really depends on the game, but people enjoy playing it and continue to enjoy playing it. So
Yeah, definitely pretty excited to see more news and see if the hype continues and they get like a passionate fan base that wants to see an esports scene go. Um, Curious to see. Yeah, so like we can talk about more about. So like okay, so you're right? You're also, by the way, I want to mention you guys both agree, right, with me when I say that like Riot's got this huge grandiose plan. They're just like waiting to flip the switch. Like I feel like
oh no, they're gonna franchise it.
yeah,
100%. I agree with that.
They're not gonna let some
Yeah.
third party company control their fucking game. Not to like swear
Yeah.
on the podcast, but like they're not gonna. They're not gonna like. They just spent a bunch of money developing this game, and they're not gonna let some schmucks like come in and just be controlling it forever. They're gonna let it do its thing for 2 or 3 years tops, and then they're gonna be like, okay,
Yeah, they're gonna
all these
unveil
big
the secret
orgs,
plan.
like that we already have relationships with, like Cloud9 and Dignitas and Liquid and TSM. If they all have scenes, if they all have teams for the scene, boom,
Mhm.
they're gonna make deals with them instead of the tournament organizers, and they're gonna cut the tournament organizers out. So you're totally right. I mean, Riot has. This isn't just some
Yeah,
whim and
they're not
fancy
actually
thing.
waiting, doing nothing for sure.
No, they're
like
planning.
they're planning. They're twiddling their thumbs over there in the corner for sure.
Yeah.
But
They're
so
watching
okay,
their little kid
so
play on the playground, and they're like, okay,
yeah,
now that you've grown up, you need to take care of us.
exactly. They're just gonna swoop in. It's like, thank you, we'll take over from here. Like we'll set up the
Yeah.
rest, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
so okay, now we know what Riot's doing, right? They're waiting, they're chilling. They'll know when the time's right. So if you guys were Valve and Blizzard, are you worried? Are you gonna do anything? Or like how far does this go? Like how far does this affect you? What do you guys think?
Do you guys want to start with one first and then
I think we should
go
start
to the
with
other?
because we haven't covered them as much as we have Blizzard and their arena, and Valve. We haven't really hardly mentioned Valve's involvement in Counter Strike at all.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I think when it comes to Valve, I think a lot of their struggles come because of their lack of competitive scene. I don't blame them because I feel like there is an issue with marketing, first of all, because I think with marketing, you're using terms like bomb, terrorist, counter-terrorist, AK-47, stuff like that. And it makes it really hard to have people invest in that. Like, oh yeah, terrorists, let's go. Yeah, I think that's one of the problems they've had, but I think A lot of other professional players have commented about how difficult it is to be in the scene currently. I think like a prominent voice of that is Zelsis. Zelsis said, "Well, my option is I can go into Valorant, enjoy the hype, and possibly make a good career, or I can keep on playing CS and work at McDonald's and use McDonald's Wi-Fi to keep playing."
Such a meme among esports players is like, oh, okay, well, I'm either gonna do my esport thing or I'm gonna go work at McDonald's.
Yeah,
or
why
like a
is it
fast
always
food-
McDonald's, man?
Because I think it's because a lot of them don't have not to meme education, but a lot of them give up their education to do this. Like they,
Oh, that's
this is a
true.
dream of theirs, and so when they fail, like they got to go back to school, or they've already missed that opportunity, and they, shit. Like,
Wait, Nate Shaw is actually a good example of someone who actually
yeah.
did work at McDonald's.
Yeah,
McDonald's?
Yeah, he worked at
yeah,
McDonald's.
he did. That's
Before,
Taco Bell or
yeah, he's the
something.
meme realized. No, it's crazy, man. And now he's one of the founders of one of the biggest esports companies. Yeah, that exists. But I think that's true that these players are taking a huge risk not only on esports but specifically in this situation on a fresh game.
Mhm.
So I don't know if Valve is even gonna do anything about it because they've been so hands off, like you said in the past. It's just hard to. The game's been around forever, and they haven't done anything to expand it really, besides let it be.
I think that might be like a valid strat from Valve though, because I think
It
like
is.
you don't do anything until there's backlash. It's really it's not proactive. It's really
Yeah.
reactive, which I don't know how good that is. But in terms of like already and like balancing, like I think Valorant came out. They saw a dip in their player base and they're like, okay, we're patching. I think they like patched a whole bunch of things that people were asking for years. So I think like overall, like I don't think Valorant is gonna be like the doom of them all. Like, oh, great, a Valorant's here. Goodbye, CSGO, Overwatch. I think what it does though is that it'll need to signal a shift. So like
Yeah.
what that might mean is just like maybe Valve hosts legitimate tournaments. They do maybe release a case dedicated to sponsoring the tier 2 and tier 3 teams that are currently struggling in the scene. Um, but either way, if they really want to remain at the top, change is needed, in my opinion.
I totally agree. You can't just rest on your laurels and past successes. Even if that is great, you have to adapt or at least move on and tweak things a little bit and react to your surroundings, but also plan ahead. It's crazy. I really dismiss the whole reactive strategy for growth. It's not you can't expand your scene or whatever you're doing if you just react only. You have to be prepared and take those risks.
Yeah.
It's kind of disheartening to see. And I just personally, I really believe in esports as a entertainment and consumption product. I just think it's incredible to see arenas full of people cheering fans for players, and it's such a it's like sports, but now we are sports, so
Now we are sports.
it's cool, and I really hope that more developers of games are willing to partner with those who are competing in their games scenes for benefit of both of them. Because if you look at stuff like Riot with their league scene, they've made a lot of money. Money's not everything, but that money can be used to make the game more exposed and bigger and more players, and that's what they want too. So I hope CS wakes up and is like, shit, we should support those small teams that are struggling.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Tell them to get
or
their
host
act
our own
together.
tournament. Well, yeah,
For
I
sure.
hope they do. But in Overwatch is, I think, more as an easier time to get their act together because they've already pumped a bunch of money in. But if they don't have enough capital to actually like follow up, they've just spent it all, then they're screwed because they have big ambitious plans, and now they either have to like do them or take it
Yeah.
back a little bit. Their travel schedule was ridiculous this year. COVID kind of shut that away, but that was kind of
Honestly, I wonder if that's just like a blessing in disguise,
Oh, for
like for the
sure.
teams and players at least,
For sure. I mean, I don't know what else Overwatch can really do now because they don't have a central competing place in LA where most esports take place in North America. But it that home and away schedule was brutal. I know Ricky was talking about it. He did a lot of the research on the travel timelines, but it's crazy, man. I can't imagine traveling for an esports competition like that when you could just play online.
Yeah, and just for context, it was found that Overwatch players were required to travel more than the Los Angeles Lakers, and this is according to Sasha Heinisch. She was in an article not too long ago, but yeah, just thinking about that, just especially since it's an online game, right? And it just seems kind of ridiculous to do all this travel, and then plus, I don't even know if there's really a benefit because think about the stress that's on the org, right? You have to do travel plans. You don't have a private jet. Um, you and for what benefit? I think like it's cool to have fans around the world, but I don't know if there's that much of kind of like a return on investment from teams, like a team perspective.
No, and especially and there's even more expenses involved too because I'm pretty sure the home team is responsible for providing practice facilities for the away team, which is kind of I mean, yeah, you'd eventually be getting your back scratched as you scratch someone else's back, but holy crap, like that's another just added expense on top of travel and I don't know.
Mm,
It seems super ambitious right now for something like that. I
yeah.
think having the centralized arena was nice, and they could just hold on to that. But they, I don't know. Maybe they just jumped the gun.
Yeah, I see. I want to say that I don't think that it's a bad idea. I just think it's just a
Poorly
little, it's just
executed.
too early, you know? Like
Okay.
I think like all like there needs to be I don't even think there's just enough like stadiums around to justify like so much travel, you know? Like and and also the point you made is like super key is like are they all like set up and ready to handle like, you know, like two teams? If they are, great, you know, but I think there's a lot of things you have to tweak for it to do right, but I really I don't know if it was it's just pretty a little preemptive in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with the preemptive side of things. I still don't know if that was the route I would have gone for. I agree that there needs to be more of a focus on esports, especially if we're only talking about the US of A. There needs to be more of a dispersed excitement for esports. Right now, it's really focal in LA. There's just no. I mean, you can watch it online, but I think the majority of esports fans are in LA, um, just based on exposure to the scene itself. There's a lot. It's a lot pretty forward-thinking, progressive culture city. So I don't know.
Yeah.
When I lived in Baltimore, I didn't see any esports related uh, arenas or venues, and there's a couple of them out here, and there's some in Vegas, and there's um, some in San Francisco. So California is pretty forward with that, but it it's crazy to think that they could. I don't know. I don't know why they thought it would be right time now. They're still pretty young as a
Yeah.
scene. Like they needed to wait a little bit. It's a good idea, maybe, but just was
Yeah, it has its
very
merits.
executed. Yeah.
But I mean, what else are they gonna do in
With so much
response to
money.
that? Yeah, well,
Well, they need
that
to
and
worry about their viewing experience because personally, I couldn't follow it. Maybe it's just because I'm old and gonna be 25 soon, but I can't follow a game play at the pro level.
yeah.
I'm too slow.
Well, is other than this though, like, are they gonna? You think they're gonna make any other moves or any response to like Valorant, maybe like new patches and update or anything like that?
I mean, they have Overwatch 2 coming out, so maybe that's an opportunity to pump up the competitive scene. Um, we'll see. They've changed the role selection recently, at least in casual competition. I don't know if it's the same shoehole or shoehorn rather kind of thing where you have to have 3 attack, 3 defense, and 3 healers, but they are forcing that system in the public ranked. So it's kind of nice. You guaranteed to get to have 2 healers, 2 tank, and 2 attack rather, not 3-3-3, but 2-2-2.
Hmm.
And so you don't get stuck with 6 attackers or 6 defenders. Um, but at the same time, like if you want to go 3 attack, you can't. There's no way to do that. You're stuck with that rigid structure, and there are way more attackers than there are defenders and healers. There are 18 attackers, and I think there are 9 of each for the healers and defenders, which is kind of not good. So
Yeah, well,
they need to fix their viewing and their gameplay if they want to compete. I think is where I would focus my attention if I were Blizzard. So you hear that, Blizzard? Do that. No, but I mean, any other ideas in terms of like gameplay, structure of their scene, bringing in third-party sponsors, like what anything that catches the eye that we need to write our letters to Overwatch or Blizzard or Valve rather.
I'll tag on a bit because I think my greatest difficulty when I watched it was just kind of like understanding what was going on. Like, there's a lot of skills, a lot of characters as well, different game modes. What you have like assault, control, escort. So kind of like the whole overall game format made it difficult for me. And I think like the biggest thing that I enjoy when it comes to competitive games is really being able to see when a player has made a play like significant. So like when it comes to League, you just like, oh man, he hit a 5-man Malphite ult. Or in CSGO or another kind of shooter is like making a 1v5 a retake. It's kind of like when you see those plays, you know like wow, that player played really well. They did a well play, an amazing play. But when it came to Overwatch, I never could see like wow, that was really good. Or it's kind of like a spectator thing, and I know that they have worked on making the spectator experience better. But I think for me, I think maybe coming up with a definitive vision of what they want competitive Overwatch to look like, whether it be like a designated amount of like attackers and defenders, maybe like reworking skills to make it. Because I feel like when I have heard about Overwatch, a big problem that they had was like healing and shields. And I know even from a spectator aspect, I'm like, wow, that guy's really tanky. Why isn't he dying?
man,
So-
this has just become a shit on Overwatch instead of
No, I mean,
Valorant things,
it's we're trying to figure out like what they can do, but at the same time, I think
It's difficult.
huge. Like their viewing experience, that kind of it defines like if you can't watch the game consistently, it's hard to have an esports scene,
Mhm.
around you.
Yeah. Well, I mean
They're-
that because
they're
then
hand
I
in
mean
hand.
that's like us saying just like, well, what did they do? I don't know, man. Sounds like they should have died off earlier, or like they shouldn't have done this, you know? So
I think
like,
it's a great game. It's one of the few I return to casually. I just think that they need to make the viewing experience more palatable, or digest. I don't know. It's just something like I don't know why.
it's so weird because like some of the things I'm just like, well, okay, like for example like Zarya, right? Like with her graviton, like the little like vacuum sucking bomb thing, you can see it and you're like, yeah, and the cast just hype it up and like the whole team is in there and you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a big high moment. But so like I don't think like some of it has to do with there aren't exciting moments, but I think just like the mix between the first person, third person is so much harder with all the like different movement abilities compared to when you do the first third um in CS:GO, right? But then we have Valorant's take on it as well because they also have like abilities and whatnot. So I'm curious to see if like do you guys have any of that like viewership problems when you or have you guys like spectated enough like Valorant to have an opinion on that?
So they tried to develop some sort of program to view Overwatch in like a camera, like a floating camera or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if there just needs to be tweaks to that. I haven't seen Valorant's method of viewership yet. I haven't been able to turn into a lot of tournaments, but yeah, I don't. Have you guys checked that out? Is it like how does it compare to CS:GO or Valorant's camera?
Okay, so what I will say is that I think CS:GO probably has the best spectator in my opinion. I think it has the best spectator experience just because it's so easy to follow everything that goes on. And what I mean by this is that you can just like watch a certain player and you have like an idea of like where his cursor is, and you know what like a crazy flick he makes, or you know where a skill like a smoke or a molly goes. And I feel like for that, that's not too chaotic because everyone has the same thing. You basically are watching guns and you're watching utility like flashes.
Okay.
So I think that keeps it simpler. And when it comes to Valorant, I think it kind of like follows that same format where the emphasis is on gunplay. So you know how they aim. That's kind of like the main focus. And I think there are moments where it gets kind of chaotic, where you have like a smoke wall, a whole bunch of smokes. You have like somebody's ulti's off, and to some extent, it does get difficult to follow. Uh, but I feel like it's still manageable. And like when it comes to like Overwatch and thinking about like clarity, I feel like it might be just my inexperience with the game with Overwatch, but like I feel like skills were on a lot lower cooldown when it comes to Overwatch, where you can shoot as much as you want. But I feel like for Valorant, they kind of like capped to what you can do per round. So, for example,
That's true.
yeah, you have like one ice wall when it comes to like Sage. Once you use it, it's gone. You're not going to see that skill again. And there's other ones like, okay, he put his firewall, or he dropped a smoke. He dropped only one smoke. He has two left.
It's still in beta, Ricky. You never know.
That's true. So what I'm hoping is that if they're smart, they'll keep this vision of the game, because I think from a spectator aspect, really, it's easier to follow. And if you add way too much chaos and too much stuff,
Yeah, if it was
uh,
cooldown based instead of use based, it'd be really different.
yes, exactly. And I think that's what kind of like the mistakes they might have seen when it comes to Overwatch, just kind of like that clarity issue.
I
And
don't know if it's a mistake. Maybe it's just it's a difficulty that Overwatch
yeah,
faces
okay,
because of the gameplay style.
mhm.
I like the fact that Overwatch lets you have your abilities on cooldown, because it encourages you to they cool down faster if you do things as well, because you're rewarded as a player for achieving small
Right.
victories like doing damage and capturing bits of an objective and blocking something and healing someone. You're rewarded by to get closer to your maximum amazing ability that will change the game, and so I think that's really cool. But you're kind of rewarded in a similar progression style with Valorant or CSGO, where you get cash for kills, and then you spend that on your better guns or your abilities in Valorant,
Mhm.
which I like. I like that system as well, but I don't think that Overwatch's cooldown based system is maybe necessarily a mistake. I just think it's maybe a
It's a different
difficulty
approach,
based.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a different approach because of the game is different. They're
Yeah, not
similar.
a bad game. Esport wise, it's a little
Yeah,
maybe
it's
a
a good. I think
viewership wise, right?
Overwatch is a great game. It just doesn't
Yeah.
translate well to esports. In a similar way to like Fortnite. Fortnite struggled really hard on an esports scene because the game changes too much. That's at least my
Yeah.
opinion of it. The meta changes way too much, and so because of that, certain things are ridiculously OP, and you have to play with them, or you're gonna lose. So, the esports scene it's still there, but it doesn't. It definitely, for being the biggest game for a long time, it didn't take off like the game did, and they're fine with that. Epic's not really probably concerned.
hmm
So, but I
They're
think
laughing their way to the bank.
they are. They're laughing really hard because Fortnite existed for years, but now it's a mobile game.
Yeah.
No, it's I think Valorant will be here for a while. Whether or not it's gonna actually be the king of the three, Overwatch and CS:GO and Valorant, we'll see. But I think Overwatch still has a chance to be at the top, just because of the
Yeah.
game is really fun. It's just an exciting game to play, and so if the game can actually,
The community's still there for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, the community is still excited about
Yeah.
it. It's just that it's the esport is
The
not.
direction is a little questionable at the moment. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, with that, is there anything else about Valorant that caught your guys' eye? Something that you guys wanted to bring up? I know you wanted to talk. Do you want to talk about that? That was the female Dignitas team you were bringing up.
That's crazy that the Dignitas FE, the first all female team to compete in both CS:GO and Valorant.
Wait, do they even wait? Is that like their only like Valorant players? Like their only players are female players?
That'd be interesting to know. I'll look that
Like,
up real quick while you guys chat. Go ahead.
yeah.
I'll do a little digging.
Yeah, I was gonna say that It'd be really interesting if this was their only competitive team, because I know before in the past we've seen, like, I think in Counter Strike they have a like a women's league and a, like, I guess like a male league. Um, I'm not sure if it's like strictly male or if it's just like, the top, but I think that's like very interesting. So I think it'd be, I guess, like very optimistic to see, this is like their only team.
Yeah, this is the only teams I'm finding, or players rather, that I'm finding for them.
Wow.
That doesn't look like they have any. They still have their CSGO team, but they've played Valorant, but they haven't actually, like, none of them have swapped over to the game. They're still on their Valorant contracts, or excuse me, they're still on their CSGO contracts. Pardon me. So they haven't swapped yet. They've released like a video on April 14th called like when Dig CSGO plays Valorant, and they have another one 8 days later of them playing squads together versus other teams. But they're still called Dig CSGO. They're not changing their name at all. So that's crazy. Yeah, I mean that's huge. Good for them. First all pro. Well, they're not full. They're not a full team. There's only 4 of them. So.
Oh, I guess they're not the first one then.
they're not. They're only 4, but
They got it. They
they're
got
4/5. They're 4/5. We'll give it to them. But that's still pretty badass, man. Esports is changing, let alone but Valorant coming around. It's cool. We need more diverse teams. Yeah, that's pretty sick. But anything else that's exciting people about esports this week or recently, especially during the COVID season? Me personally, I'm excited about how much things are being streamed. I think that's awesome. I know League is doing a lot of charity streaming for COVID this week. A bunch of the regions are doing long streams with pro players, so all the sub money is going to charity.
Oh yeah,
pretty
yeah,
cool.
the charity one. Yeah, the thing that Riot stream is definitely really, really cool. Yeah, no, I mean honestly, I'm pretty excited to see I'm just really curious to see like what's in the treasure chest, like what's like Riot's actual plan for their league, because like like they got one, and like I know someone's got like a txt file somewhere of it, but I don't know. I mean, I think honestly, this is a little cheesy, but like something I actually really like about Valorant is, have you guys seen Shroud stream Valorant? Like this guy loves it. Like he,
Oh yeah.
like
Super
it's like I'm looking
optimistic.
at him and like he loves it. Like I mean, like this guy like dedicated like so much like years like playing like so many different FPS games, like pop off in CS:GO, like PUBG, like Apex, anything he touches, he's obviously like really good. And I think I want to say it speaks a lot how positive he speaks of it, but that's just one pro's opinion on it. But
No, but
that
that's
definitely
good.
excites
Like
me for sure.
if your players are excited about the game, especially at the top level, like that's how you get it to grow. Because then someone will tell someone about that game. Or like, oh shit, did you see this play this dude made? Like, no, what's Valorant? Boom,
Yeah,
they're in. Like they're like that's it. Like that's how you get growth. Just through word of
yeah,
mouth and exciting sharing of like excitement. You share excitement with someone about something, they want to play it too.
yeah.
So
Honestly, Riot should funnel some money to
that
Shroud.
guarantee they
He's
gave
Yeah.
saying
him
he's
some.
yeah.
As you said, he's not sponsored to streams. I guarantee they gave him some. Come
Yeah,
on.
he's like, yeah, dude, like, oh, I'm not even sponsored to say this, and I was like, okay, all right, yeah, I mean, sure, but I mean, did you guys catch that? Like, it was definitely like probably like a month ago by now, but it was like the streamer versus dev one,
Yes,
that
that's
they
exactly what I was thinking
Yeah,
about
that one
too.
was
Oh
cool.
my
Yeah, that was
god, that
good.
was so funny because like if you guys didn't get a chance to catch it, so these a lot of popular streamers like as it was like Summit, Shroud, and then there's like I mean the whole team was like super stacked, right? And they were playing against like the Valorant devs, and they got absolutely destroyed. Like it wasn't even close, and the morale was super low. But you just see like Shroud in the stream, and he's just like, oh man, dude, doesn't this make you so excited? Like these devs are so good, we're getting totally whooped, but Like that means we can get so much better, and nobody was having it. It's just like, why is Shroud? How much money is he giving him? Like,
That's hilarious. No, I mean, there's some beauty in getting absolutely shit on in a game, but it's especially when you can actually be like, okay, I saw what you did there. I'm gonna try to do that.
yeah,
So I think
he's got a good
that's
mental.
yeah, he's gonna try to replicate some of the things he got shit on with, and that's like I said, it's all about being excited and thinking about the game, and man, I wish I was
Yeah.
playing Valorant right now, or like that moment where
Absolutely.
you're sitting at dinner and you're chewing your food and you're just like, I want to play. Like I'm thinking about
Yeah,
that
theory
that
crafting
combo.
while you're not
Yeah,
playing. That definitely shows like a good indicator of like this game's gonna go somewhere. Like I want to get better and whatnot.
yeah. Ricky, what about you? Anything exciting this upcoming weeks or recently that's gotten you jiving about esports?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the response from the esports community has been really fun to see in terms of doing a lot more local events. So, like, we mentioned elite esports, but I think like TSM announced a Apex Invitational. So I think it's been really good, and it's really good for the ecosystem.
Postponed.
Postponed, yes,
Oh
but
no!
but
Suffering COVID.
yeah, but I think it's really encouraging because I think this is the exact route that a lot of organizations should be taking, especially everyone's at home because of COVID. So I think it's definitely a good opportunity to give back to the community and host these local events.
Yeah,
Nah,
this is a
really
good time
true.
for esports to make a push for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the only things that are on TV. I mean,
Mhm.
some things are coming back, but man, it's pretty easy to host a stream and put it on the whole airwaves. So it's pretty cool. But well, thank you guys for tuning in to our first ever podcast. Changing the meta. We hope you've enjoyed it. But this has been a great discussion on Valorant and its emergence into the esports scene. Hopefully, it can have a long life, and we see some amateurs become pros and some what we call them Valorant purists, what we said. So definitely want to see some of those come about. But this is it's definitely gotten a huge growth in just under 2 months, which is crazy. So
Yeah, maybe after this episode we change your title to change the Overwatch League.
yeah, and I hope hopefully Blizzard's listening. But yeah,
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
thank you guys.
thank you guys. Bye bye.